end of the Shift
Hard to
book.
believe it.
Yeah, and tactic number 12,
Yes.
which is bulletproofing the transaction. And we've had some conversations about this tactic off and on, as you know, like at team meeting, different times of the year, where we've just pulled the Shift book out and we've said, let's talk about bulletproofing the transaction, because we get a report. I don't know if you guys knew that, at the end of the month after we transmit, that tells us how many people had contracts that fell off, like that didn't close, that they requested an earnest money or they, canceled it. So, we start seeing an uptick in that. We're like, okay, what's going on? How are you feeling?
So I agree. I think that we're in a very um, changing market. It changes all the time.
Yeah.
And I feel that since October, it took a while to sell a couple houses, even prior to that.
Yeah.
But, when we got into December and we thought, oh, there's going to be a rate change, and it didn't happen in April, and so all these different things. And it, I've got some houses that go quickly, and I've got some that have been sitting, and so some of them have canceled, and I thought that's really, really odd. But yeah, so what I'm feeling about it is that today, in today's market, I said pricing and prices are not going down. It's just that people's expectation of what their house needs to sell for is too high, I feel. So it's not like the prices are going down. However, it might feel that way to a seller. So I think when you overprice it and it doesn't sell, then it does, cancel. And I do feel that the buyers, there's so few buyers right now that they're really, like I had one transaction in the last 2 months. I sold the house 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great house. I sold it, fell out of contract, sold it, fell out of contract, sold it, and it did close. And the situation was there were some things to update it, but that was priced well. But the people buying it just didn't want to do the things to it. So I mean, it just depends. I think people are like I had 2 contracts come in this weekend, and they were 25,000 under asking price, 2 of them for the same property,
Yeah.
and they were both rejected. So buyers have expectations that they want to get a deal. Sellers have expectations that I paid X number of dollars for it. I want this. This is what the market should say.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that right now we're in that situation where it's just weird. I mean, that's just the best way to describe it because
Yeah.
if you price it well, Daniel McKee, an example, had multiple offers like a week ago. And I sold a house, I think Bradley County had in the 80s for their days on market like last month, like 80 days.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Someone posted that. I don't know. I'd have to verify that, but high amount. And I had one that was on the market probably 30 days or whatever, and it's under contract. Now, it wasn't far off from the asking price,
Mm-hmm.
but that being said, it's just slower. But how do we
Yeah.
protect, like you were saying, how do we bulletproof it? Let's talk about
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I think when I went, I didn't see every open house in the world, and I don't talk to every single agent. However, yesterday there was a theme, a couple of different price points, and both of those agents, now they weren't KW agents, said, "Wow, I can't. This has been sitting. I don't know what's happening. Like it's not moving." And so, there could be some pricing strategies there. There are a lot of things as you look at it to bulletproof. I like how you said the expectations. This chapter says actually either market, a seller's market or a buyer's market. The buyers are in a fear based mindset. And you're like, well, how could it be fear based in a seller's market? Well, we experience the fear base of, I got to get it. What did I make the best offer? Did I offer them my firstborn child? I mean,
Right.
I'm fearful that I'm going to lose out, and that's what drives the prices high. And in the other market, the other situation or the change is I'm fearful that I'm making a bad decision. Like I don't know if I should make this decision right now. And a lot of that's just based on, the things around you. And we've really talked about that a lot, expectations conversations. We talked about it with short sales, REOs. Like there's always a system or a series of how to do that. And so when Jay and I did the mastermind that we did last month, well, it may have been May, 2 months ago, we asked, out of the bulletproofing the transaction topics, how many people, raise your hand, had this issue? And inspections was number one. And number two was co-op agent, because there were some places that they felt like the transaction fell apart. So there are some specific zones that you can look at and narrow down and hone in bulletproofing strategies around each one of those. Um, so I think that that's a place where we can really increase our skill. And I don't know that everyone out there in our profession is talking about that currently on how to do that.
I think that 100%, everything you said, 100% dead on. I think one of the things I need to do personally is really set better expectations.
Okay.
I've had a situation in the last month where I had a transaction that was very challenging, and I feel like had I set better expectations, that might not have been the case.
Hmm.
So that's on me. And but I learned from it because if we're teachable and learn and want to learn and figure out like how can we do better, make a better system, whatever, then that's what we need to do. And then I think that one of the comments from the offer that I received, I have a condo downtown, okay, and I had two offers come in, and both of them were the exact same amount. One asked for closing costs, one didn't, and they were both $25,000 under the reduced price already.
Interesting.
Both of them. And here's what I heard from one of them who was like an engineer. And we talk about the disc profile, but we also need to talk about those people that have a mindset like an engineer, because or they're just or not, right? Either you are or you aren't like that. I mean, he was like, I'm not going to pay his words. Ready?
Was it the agent's words or the buyer's
Buyer's
words?
words. I'm saying the buyer who was
Okay.
very engineer minded. He said, I'm not going to pay more because someone made a poor buying mistake because of COVID's blow up. In other words, he said, you paid an inflated price for this item, this home, this condo, and I'm not going to, it doesn't affect me. I'm going to give you what this price is. But the problem is that in his mind, that was his mindset. But when you run the comps, he's wrong. The value of that is more than he offered.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard to get an engineer mindset to say, oh, market value says this, but on paper, this is, I mean, like you paid more than you should have here. And that happens all the time. People think, well, you look how much they paid. I'm not going to pay more than that. Well, it doesn't matter what they paid. It doesn't matter all these other things. What matters is what is someone willing to pay today compared to the other prices of the other items around it. So getting people to come off the idea of like, I'm not going to, like, look what they paid for it. I'm not going to pay any more than, whatever, versus this is the value of the home.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
you're always going to have. I think that is a fantastic example. You
mhm.
guys may have had. You may have more of these
Yeah.
conversations, right? Well, that's very
If you have
interesting.
the buyer,
Yeah.
if you have the buyer and you say, look, I know that we can probably go here, but if you go here, you're going to be rejected because this is the case. Well, I saw what they paid, and I said, well, okay, I tell you that's fine. But if we were to have an appraiser who's the authority on pricing this home, compare all the other properties around it at this price, it's going to be higher than your offer is. Your offer is an offer based on what you feel they overpaid, and so that's not the value of the property. Now, if you're looking for a deal and you find a motivated seller, you may find a deal. But in the case of value of the home, your value is here, not where you are here.
And I think that sometimes you have to ask too, that person that's looking for the deal, are they just looking for a deal, or are they looking for their forever home? Are they trying to marry the house or not?
Well,
I just,
everyone's
yeah,
worried about like the backstory is that there's going to be higher interest rates right now. I
yeah.
mean, there's going to be higher prices. So these people will be paying a lot more than these other people paid just a few years ago, and that's hard for some people to swallow.
Hmm.
However, the reality is this is the price. And I've read so many articles this weekend that said home values are not going to decline. Now, what people want to sell their homes for and what it sells for might be a different story
Yeah.
because the owner wants a little bit higher than really what they should. If you say, hey, you're probably looking somewhere between 325 and 350. Oh, I want 365. Well, then there's your problem.
I mean, they're late to that party.
The party's done.
Yeah, they're not early adopters
No,
of,
no.
of what's going
But
on in the market.
But our
Yeah.
job is to say, well, let me just tell you, we've got these houses here. I could show you a bunch of them that are
Mm-hmm.
priced higher than they should be, and they're sitting on the market. And the longer they sit, it's the little real estate meme. It's like dating this. The longer you sit without being sold, the more, people think there's a problem with you or with the home, right?
Oh, yeah, that's what they think.
Yeah,
That's not,
something's
not
wrong with it.
necessarily
No,
true. But
it was
see,
not
that's what you
priced right
do
at the
it.
beginning.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Well, I remember having a property that the couple got a really good deal the tax records reflected it because they knew the person selling the house. And so what the tax records show that they paid for it was way below what it was worth. However, I would get that same sort of mentality of, well, I see what they paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to play in market value. We're going to play in discount world because why should you make that much money? Well, why that's what we get in. That's why we buy real estate, right? For the investment part. So you're always going to have to tackle the mindsets and use logic around their emotion. And I love how you were doing that.
Yeah.
And you've already been. I heard you say this is what happened. I heard you say I'm going to look at the situations and then I'm going to go find data because you immediately went to look for data in the market and what was happening. And you already are looking at what are interest rates, what's affecting interest rates. I heard you talk about that yesterday
Yes.
with, what inflation was, what the job market looked like,
Yeah.
and all of those
So
things.
last week was a really interesting week because we had a decent Wednesday was a release of information regarding unemployment, and Friday was a release of information regarding job creation. So they were kind of 2 days apart, but the Fed met and saw the data from that, so they kind of spoke after that. And what happened was that the unemployment rate went up just to like point 0.1, excuse me, and then the job creation also went up. Excuse me. The reason for that is that they said they created new jobs. Well, that's the contradictory thing. You've got higher unemployment, but you got more jobs. What does that mean? Like, I don't understand that. So the Fed's like, steady, we're kind of hold steady. 3 or 4 um, news articles came out in my phone that I read, and I don't know. Some of them, came from really credible sources, but they said there are going to be 8 rate cuts starting very soon. Well, I would love that to be the case, and we've been hearing about rate cuts, but
Exactly, for
it
a
just would be
while.
great for that because they said a trajectory over the next through 26, because we're in 24 now,
Yeah.
right? So through probably the next year and a half, 2 years, like that, they're saying that we could get back into the high fours, low fives as a rate, and at that point, people that have a 3.5 will be fine to do like a 4.5. You know what I'm saying, or
Yeah.
4.75. So I think that, and there's so many people out there want to do something because if you look at it talked about the inventory, the houses that were coming on the market. They said that was a problem before, but now we're seeing more houses coming on the market. So I think we're going to see a tidal wave. I think if we can get these interest rates down and people, it is an election year, regardless of what side you're on. I think that's a lot of people are waiting to see how that's going to, play out for November. So we might be kind of like, let's just see what's happening right now. That might be the mindset. But
Yeah.
there's always people that have to sell. And that deal that I got under contract this week was a divorced gentleman. I mean, people are going to go through the difficulties of life through divorce or through death or through, having to move from one place to another. I've sold so many houses for people moving out of state, right? So they have to move, so they have to sell their house. So there's reasons that make people put their house on the market. But when we get to a lower interest rate, it's going to be because I want to, not because I have to. You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
for sure.
And so we need to be preparing now with like, getting our systems all squared away, our values all squared away. I know that's the thing we hear over and over about this whole new world that we're going to be in. But the value of what we offer and being able to say, let's walk through this together. It's been a change in how we look at things and how we're going to do things, but we're going to do this together. So study up, be informed, collaborate with other agents that have an understanding of kind of this thing. Because in August, which is like, what, 6 weeks away, there's going to be some changes.
Yeah, and you know what? We're ready for it.
We
And
are.
I think, we're always going to have presidential elections. So, if you're just getting into the business and you're tackling this time or this era of this year, you're going to experience it again. Like it's always going to be what we have to deal with economically
Mm-hmm.
with what's happening around us, and we
Mm-hmm.
can't control that.
Mm-mm.
But it is we're a reality,
It is.
and we find the good out of all of the things,
Yes,
right?
and I want to share one more thing that happened to me personally, and I just want to say this. So,
Okay.
I was transferred from no, from Baltimore, Maryland to Toledo, Ohio. Okay, so I had a house built in Baltimore, and I loved it. Brought my first child home there. It was like like, I thought we're going to be here for a while. It had a lot. I loved Baltimore because you could go 1 hour away to Amish country and 1 hour away to the Pentagon. So you can have horse and buggies or a missile,
Yeah,
like all that within an
yeah.
hour's drive. It was pretty cool. And so
Change of
anyway, so
scenery.
it was like hard for us to kind of figure, oh, here we go. Well, we put the house on the market
Hmm.
and hadn't sold yet. And we go to Toledo on September 1st. And 11 days later, September 11th happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because
Hmm.
that was the year. So what happened was it was 2001. What happened was what went in my mindset, Sally? What do you think went in my mindset? My
The
house is on the
bullet.
market in
Yeah.
another state.
Mm.
I'm here. It's never going to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? It
What?
sold. It sold.
Mm-hmm.
So houses will sell, things will happen. So,
Yes.
this whole fear about all these things you talked about, the election and,
Mm-hmm.
interest rates, houses will sell. I had another one, I had one due, really go under contract. We negotiated, it's fine. I've got 3 closings this week. I had 2 last week. They're happening, right? Things are happening. I've got one for August now.
Well, it's because you're always looking for opportunity. You're
Mm-hmm.
always getting out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think if you're thinking, gosh, I'd like to really put my systems in place. I'd like to keep my transactions together. How do I get on the front end of that before it happens? If you get this book, there's some available at the front. It's
Mm-hmm.
on Audible.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest getting it though. I mean, Audible's great, but I would back it up with
Highlighting it
having
and
it
everything,
right,
yes. Mm-hmm.
like so you could reference it and look at it. But you can get it on Keller Ink. On page 246, there is 6 places to bulletproof the transactions, what could go wrong, and the solutions. So, like inspections and repairs, appraisals, what could happen there, loan approval and funding, other contingencies, because there may be some like house to sell, different scenarios other than what you're used to, besides, inspections and loans and appraisals. Co-op agent, what could go wrong there? We could probably have like a book on that one.
Yes, we can.
Deadlines, not, people still miss deadlines even though they
Okay, so
shouldn't. Okay.
pause. So let me tell you about deadlines, okay?
Okay.
There are agents out there that have been doing business for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm not trying to be pointing fingers or whatever, but like deadlines don't seem to be a big deal to them, because we're just going to get it done, whatever. But like I had a transaction this weekend, and the lady, they gave us, okay, the offer came in about 8 o'clock at night, and guess how long they gave us for an initial offer? They gave us till 11 o'clock the next morning. It's a very
Okay.
short window,
Yeah, that
right?
is.
Then
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, we're going to do a counter, which typically is a shorter window because you've already got the offer going. So I said, we're going to give them till 6 o'clock. And you know what time they needed me to change it till? Noon the next day. I'm like, what? So, but because she said they needed it there, I wasn't going to let ours expire or whatever, because a lot of people do that and just get it bound, whatever. I sent a whole new counter offer over with the same deal, just changed response time, got it sent. So I kept the contract clean and ready to go.
Alive.
But I could have just said I could have said, oh, just respond whenever. But that's not how
Mm-mm.
you do it.
We need, I always say it's not a problem till it's a problem. Like you can do things
Right.
flying by the seat of your pants, skipping tra la la, whatever, very lackadaisical. And then when it's an issue, then that's where the chips fall, and that you are like, well, you can't rely on everyone to pick up your slack. You've got to be on top, and that's part of doing paperwork. So I love that you did it how it needed to be done.
Right. And
It
if
was
you
extra work,
It
but you
was a
did
little bit
it.
of extra work, and I
Yeah,
communicated to my clients, "Hey, look,
yeah.
they're still interested. We are under contract and it's bound today, but we need to give them a little bit more time. He was going to work till 6 today, so that makes sense. I mean, it was a rational, a decent reason.
Mm-hmm.
He had to work till 6. As soon as he was out, he went back to the house again, which kind of scares me sometimes to go back through do another walkthrough while we have a document going. Usually, not that, everyone has a little bit of a scare when they're going to go back and see it again. Are they really going to want it? But he
Yeah.
did. He did. And so the bottom line is that just, talking to your clients, explaining what's going on, all the good things.
So I wonder, do like the person that sent it over, and we all have the moments where different properties, different deadlines, you're trying to hurry up and get a response because you legitly think that somebody else is going to swoop in, so you're trying to close the window. And at the same time, if you don't, reach out, text message, whatever it takes. And I know some of you out there are saying, well, agents don't respond when I message, right? I get that, and we don't want to be that agent. But just asking, hey, I'm going to send this over. I'm going to put this deadline. Will that work? Oh no, my clients are on a cruise ship and they won't have access for this many hours. I mean, knowing that up front is helpful,
It is, it
right?
is. And but again, just communication
Mm-hmm.
and then setting expectations. Like if someone says, well, they want to extend, well, some people said no, they can make their decision now. Well, that's not the case. He's at work. So I had
Mm-hmm.
a rational person who said, okay, we'll write that over, and we got it under contract. And they came in like 10,900 under the asking price. They did not ask for closing costs, but what we did say is like, let's meet in the middle. So we kind of were able to we didn't say we want way up here or way down there. Oh, they kind of wanted here. I said, this is the middle ground right here. And so everything's good. But anyway, it's like I
Well,
said,
it's a chess match,
that
right?
transaction was a divorced person. Last week I was helping another agent drive around look at houses, or the week before, and it was a divorced person. So unfortunately, there's life things that happen,
Mm-hmm.
and divorce and death and people being transferred. Those are still happening. So we're going to still have sales.
Yeah, and I think if you look at page I don't have my glasses on, 282. I
Hmm.
was like, is that a two? Bulletproofing strategies, and there's two things: proactive prevention, so outcome framing, and that's that strategy, that's that chessboard. Let's look at what all the things that possibly could happen and decide ahead of time what a strategy is around them, with buyers, sellers, vendors, and co-ops, right? There's a lot of places that you're a project manager in a
Hmm.
transaction. Then setting expectations, like you mentioned, preparing alternatives. What will we do? Reassurance. Giving people along the way a reassurance that we've got this. Listen, it's going to be okay. This happened. Remember, we talked about that it possibly could, and then what we would do. So we've got this.
Hmm.
And I think that just makes them feel like they're not out there wondering who's paddling the boat, and they're just floating around. And then early response to problems and issues. What's happening, what's not happening, here's what's happening next. Inspecting expectations of what you wanted that to happen, problem solving, and contract to close tracking. And some of you use contract to close businesses, and you feel really comfortable with them because they've already got proven communication systems. I think the quickest that you can get on a problem and say, this is the problem,
Hmm.
and let them know, the better. I know for on the disc, my personality being a very high I will not want to do that because it feels bad, right? And you have to exercise the muscle to go ahead, because if they find it out from somebody else,
Hmm.
it looks really bad.
Hmm.
So you want to just go ahead and put the thing out there. And I think that's where proactive prevention and communication builds the trust that when you have to deliver something that's less than stellar, it's okay.
Yeah, and I found that when you're honest with people, honesty
Mm-hmm.
builds trust, right? That's one of
Right.
the values.
Yes.
So
Why four C2Ts?
that's right. So I have a very high I as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, confrontation and that kind of stuff has always been so hard. But when you say, look, I'm really sorry for this, and people know that you're sincere,
Right.
this is the situation, and, it's either going to terminate or we have to do these things like that. I mean, if there's a way that we can figure out this together, let's figure it out. But, the reality is this is where we are. And these are, if it falls apart, we'll do everything we can to get it back on the market quickly. And I've
Mm-hmm.
had this happen before, okay? I've had this happen before, so they understand that this is not my first time for this to happen. And because this has happened before, this is kind of what the outcome has been, to give
Mm-hmm.
them an idea kind of where to go. But I think communication, like regular communication, like I called one of my clients just to say, it's been a week or two. I know it's been sitting on the market, and I don't like to go too long, but I just want to let you know this is what we're seeing, this is what's going on. And so I feel like when we have houses on the market, I feel like we've done our job just to get out there and do the open houses. We still have to communicate, even if we have nothing to say, you know?
Well, I think too, we're so used to being able to have the hot sheet and to see the movement, to see the pendings, to see things sitting, and we are seeing the market. But when we talk to a seller and we list their home, we give them market data at the listing presentation, and sometimes don't give them an update. And then if the house is sitting, they're still over here living in this price point. And I think that, giving them the expectation up front, hey, we're going to do a review on what the market's doing, because the market's always moving, just like the stock market. And I'm going to keep you up to date. I don't control the market. Sometimes it moves up and down. So I want you to be aware of how your product is sitting right now in the world. So it takes a system. One of the things that I love this is like one of my favorite chapters beside the mindset chapter in this book, because it really gives you some practical things that you can go apply. So I encourage you to get the book and to do that and look at it and look at those areas that you can win. And that the last piece of the book is the gift of the shift, and I like the farmer's luck. Okay, so in the very last closing pages, it talks about in every situation, whether you move from a seller's market to a buyer's market, wherever we are, you're going to have some things that are great that you get some luck out of, some vibe. Then some things that maybe are not so great, but good will come out of it. And I think that's what we are hearing people say. Good's going to come out of the changes we're seeing that are coming in August. So this farmer says one day, without warning, the farmer's prize horse ran away, and someone that he was like his best horse that worked his land, and so the neighbors were like, "Oh, we're so sorry. That's bad luck." And the farmer said, "Maybe." And so the following morning, the farmer woke up to find his prize horse had returned with two other wild horses. Okay, and upon hearing that news, the neighbor said, "What good luck!" And the farmer said, "Maybe." So the very next day, while trying to tame one of the wild horses, the farmer's son was thrown and badly injured his legs. And the neighbors came by quickly to offer help and said, "Such bad luck." And he was like, "Maybe," was the answer. A day later, officials from the military arrived looking for the young men to fight in the battle. And recognizing the farmer's son was badly injured, they did not ask him to enlist. "Such good luck," said the neighbors. "Maybe," answered the father. So I think that when you look at the things, it's always looking for opportunity. Good and bad will always happen. Good and other. Other is a better word than
Well,
bad.
and I think applying that specific thing to where we
Yeah.
are today is that, you can say, I know you paid more than you really wanted to get this deal, but this is where we had to agree because here's the market value. But everything that I've read, I could tell them, like I would be saying this to them, everything I've read and all the history, historical facts that we have about about homes, your home's going to grow in value. So in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, by just making your monthly payments, you're going to be able to see equity grow in your thing. So you might feel ouchy today, but here's the case. And if you feel like you've got such a high interest rate, I mean, we've heard it's going to drop, but I believe it will at some point. So if it does, then you can refinance then and lower your monthly payment, and you're still getting the equity in your home. So I mean, it's like this feels kind of rough at the moment. The interest rate's kind of high at the moment, but there's opportunity in the future to correct that.
I love that. So, guys, we've enjoyed going through the Shift book with you. I hope that you will take this, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, and the One Thing book and make those your trifecta of success
Yes.
information. They all bear worth, looking together, like looking at them all together. I had someone request the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book again as a topic. So I'm looking closely at just doing the 24 topics of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent to go back at that. I think that always reviewing the business principles so we can recenter ourselves on what we need to be do helps us to stay number one in the market.
I agree. And this is a very simple thing that we do, but it's also very, like, the reason why we're here is because we care and we want to promote motivation and hope. And I do believe, I'm not trying to be Pollyanna, I do believe the best is yet to come. I hear that from Jay a lot.
Yes.
But I do believe the best is yet to come. And our job today is to position ourselves for that, because we're in a company that cares about us. We're in a company that provides lots of tools, lots of, the books that we have, the knowledge, the training, the other agents we have. No one can touch us. No one can touch us. Unless you feel like you don't want to, like, if you want to be in a place where there's isolation and you're on your own, that's a different place for me. I would rather be where there's support and where there's people that can walk you through things, that would happily do that to see you succeed, because we want to see everyone succeed. So
I appreciate that.
yeah.
So one last thing, and this is like a sidebar, but I think that it's a good example of time on task over time. So, Jay and I have been very consistent with at least Monday through Friday having a reel every day. And sometimes we film more than one in a day. and putting those out there. Some of those will have 100 views, some will have 300 views, and that's 300 people, so I'm very grateful for that. Occasionally, we'll have one that's like 1,700 views. So we're looking at it, trying to figure it out, right? We're like you guys, we're trying to figure out how this works. So randomly, and random is not really the word, because we're doing the
Maybe.
things. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe it's not.
It's like if you keep doing the thing over and over, even if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get something, right? So over the weekend, I saw a reel, and it was, of course, if you might have seen it because it had a lot of views. It wasn't mine. Somebody else created a really cool, lake experience where it bounced to the music, people flew up in the air, and Brad Fuquay had taken us out on his boat. Now, that's not us. That's somebody else's picture. So I was like, oh, that reminds me of that time we were on the lake. So I hit a button that says, try remix. Never done that before. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't look it up first. So I clicked try remix because I was just trying to get the video. And it wouldn't let me really put my text. So I made a box and stuck it on top of theirs, shared it out, right? One and done. Not real hard. Do you know that has had 2 million views? 2 million. Yes.
What?
Yeah, it's exactly what. I mean, I did it on my personal Instagram and then collaborated with the office. I didn't even do it the normal way that I do it. I just was like, okay, well, I don't know what I did on that. I didn't use the remix button as you were supposed to, and that's okay. I'm like, so you never know. If you just keep hammering away, you just keep doing the thing and learning what you're going to get.
That's right.
Okay, so that's all I have to say about that. All right.
Well, it's Monday. Let's make the most of it.
Yes, bye.